Hello everybody, welcome back to another video on radiology. This one is going to be number 29. We are getting close to the 30 mark, so that's something to get excited about. But let's dive into another type of fracture today. Just as always, a quick review. Feel free to check out my previous videos if you want a little bit more in-depth of an explanation. But otherwise, just pause and take a minute to take it all in. Also want to let you guys know before we jump into this fractional lesson that I'm going to try and post another video probably tomorrow or the day after that's going to deal more about bone disorders, so maybe things like osteoporosis and so on, kind of explore how these different fractures could occur and what like different bone conditions could kind of lead to these. Although physical things kind of happen, it's more common, especially in older patients where they actually have like these bone disease, bone infections, and they kind of require extra kind of precautions and all that. So we'll explore that. If we quickly take a look at this x-ray over here, we can see that it's probably an arm muscle. And we can kind of tell this because of that rotary shoulder blade. So if we take a look, we can kind of see that ball socket joint attached to the very end. And this seems like a more obese patient. I want to see it more larger because we can kind of see his muscles and everything, and it seems a lot bigger. So we can kind of go with that consensus. We can also see that essentially parts of his bones are broken. So it's broken on two sides, or like fractured on two ends, and that middle part is kind of displaced, not correctly fixtured. So that's something we'll have to look at. But this is called a segmented fracture. So this typically happens when a segment of a bone, as the name implies, is kind of fractured away from the main or outlying piece. And it's an interesting type of fracture because it's kind of like a mix of multiple fractures. You may call it two different names, just depending on how you want to describe it. But it mostly happens due to like athletic type injuries, whether like physical injuries, whether it's placing too much pressure on something. And it happens when you put um, kind of like imagine like severe type traumas. So things like sports accidents in football, um, car accidents, trauma injuries. So it's like very bad to have a segmented fracture because it's not just involved with one displacement, it's two displacements. So it makes it even harder for the bone to kind of align together. This is another example over here of the tibia, the leg muscle, leg bone, sorry. This one I provided two different views. So one of them is going to be facing us and the other is going to be an angle from the side. And I kind of did this so we can kind of take a look at the fracture. In the first one, we can kind of see the segmented fracture type. We can see the two bones kind of sticking outside, and we can see that middle piece kind of being displaced. However, on that second right half, we can see the same fracture, but it seems not as worse. It looks more like a small linear fracture or a transverse fracture, nothing too major. So it's all about perspective in radiology. You have to take many different angles of these x-rays because certain angles may exclude information that you need to know. For example, if you're going into a procedure and you were supposed to kind of take this bone out, if you're looking at a very single angle, you're not considering like a multitude of them, you're not going to be able to see like the different nuances in the bone structure because you're only looking at it from a certain way. However, if you have these like multiple compounding views, you can kind of have a better representation of how the bone looks like and have a greater understanding of what's like actually happening. Because it could slightly depend on how you look at the bone structure. So I just want to quickly throw that out there. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Hope you learned something new. Bye bye.